Every heroic journey has sacrifices. Every person has moments in their life where they have to make tough decisions.
It's intense. It's emotional.
Hard fights and bitter losses and stuff.
Something about making the decisions, right or wrong, good or bad.
So, how do you want to do this?
Well, for those of you just joining us, we have Xander Jeanneret here as our special guest, and we are talking today about characters, about your character in a new segment that I just made up that I'm calling Tell Me About Your Character. You
Dun,
play
dun, dun,
Trouvaille
dun, dun, dun,
Farfoot
dun.
on G4's Invitation to Party.
Yes.
And you worked with B-Dave, I think, to put this one together. B-Dave Walters, the DM of that show. But would you tell us first, what's the blurb? Who is
Yes.
Trouvaille Farfoot?
Trouvaille Farfoot is a halfling cleric of Timora, who is the goddess of luck. Yeah.
Okay. So briefly, without exposing any secrets,
Sure.
how did what's like you this is not a home character that you cobbled from scratch.
Right.
This is for this particular game. What's the scoop
Yeah.
there?
Yes. Okay. So, first of all, if I'm not allowed to say anything, I didn't. And if you hear anything you weren't supposed to, no, you didn't. Uh, so there, now I'm legally covered. B. Dave approached me saying that the party that they had assembled for Invitation to Party could use a little help in the healing department, and so was in need of a cleric. Specifically for some of the missions that they were going to be going on, they just needed somebody in their corner that could help them out a little bit. And the players that had been on mainly came from the G4 side and didn't have a lot of experience with Dungeons and Dragons. And so that was part of it as well, bringing me in to sort of help them out with their characters and sort of what they can do. And so we felt that a cleric coming in felt a little appropriate for that. So within this world, it's the sort of Invitation to Party's own version of Waterdeep. There is the Yawning Portal, and Trouvaille worked there as like the local cleric that could heal for a bar fight, but also give you some luck for gambling as well for a price. So that was sort of where he met the party because there were some things happening in the Yawning Portal, and definitely check out the rest of the adventure there because Trouvaille became a part of the party and is adventuring along with them now.
I do
Yeah,
think that for like as I understand it, the first D&D show on actual television.
I
Um,
think so.
we think something like that.
Yeah.
I do think that there's no more classic situation than we have a party and they are really awesome and boy we could use a cleric.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly. And
The
one
true
of the
D&D
things,
experience.
yeah, that B Dave had come up with was that he wanted to involve luck and the goddess Tamora, who features heavily, like sort of in Waterdeep, played by the amazing Abria Iyengar. She comes in as the goddess Tamora. So what a kick my cleric got out of that.
So your specific cleric, you are a level 6, right?
Yes, and eagle-eyed, viewers will note that Trouvaille is higher level than the rest of the party, and that is due to necessity of spells. I was only supposed to be an original, like, one-off character to come in and help, and so I'm like, "Well, don't take levels away from me, it still helps."
Uh, so your specific cleric is have you revealed your domain?
I think we just did the let me see. I don't remember what it is. I thought it was luck, but, what is it? What is my domain?
Well, your trickery because of Tamora.
Oh, yeah. Got
Yeah.
it. This
Mhm.
was something that we discussed with B-Dave. I forgot about this whole thing because we wanted him to be a luck-based cleric. It didn't exist anymore. That's what was the problem. So we're like, oh, we can retool the trickster domain to be like the benefits you would get from the luck domain in the past. And being a Lightfoot halfling gets I took the lucky feat as well, so that sort of balanced all of that out. Oof, that was a flashback. I forgot that whole thing happened.
No, it's perfect, and it makes for both a classic cleric but with a twist. Obviously, the
Yes.
trickery cleric is in the player's handbook, but it's not necessarily what you think of when you think archetypical cleric.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at just as we walk through here. Uh, as I'm looking up in my D&D Beyond because I'm watching your show and I'm just like, this is cool. What is this cleric like? So I'm going to go to the player's handbook as I so
And I
often
am
do.
using D&D Beyond on the show as well. Like, we all have our tablets open on it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, I used it before I worked here. Y'all know that. It's all true. Um,
Mhm.
it's real convenient. So when you choose your divine domain for your cleric, you have a number of options, many options now, but already several options in the player's handbook. One of which is there was a faster way to get here, but I will never do things the fast way. Trickery domain.
Yes.
Here's the blurb on trickery. Gods of trickery, such as Tamora, Bathsheba, Oladamara, the Traveler, Garl, Glittergold, and Loki, are mischief makers and instigators who stand as a constant challenge to the accepted order among both gods and mortals. They're patrons of thieves, scoundrels, gamblers, rebels, and liberators. Their
And good
clerics are a
people.
disruptive force in the world, puncturing pride, mocking tyrants, stealing from the rich, freeing captives, and flouting hollow traditions. They prefer subterfuge, pranks, deception, and theft rather than direct confrontation.
So we flavored this to be the trickery and the sort of invisibility and sort of thing. It's just a lucky set of circumstances that these happen. So, for instance, I use Blessing of the Trickster all the time on someone else. And I flavored it with Trouvaille has these like post-it note pads of like Dr. Scholl's that he peels off and puts on the bottom of the person's boots so that it muffles their sound and people don't happen to hear them. Lucky them.
Such a great way to implement this feature. So I was going to ask, like, what's your favorite feature you already have?
That one
You've
I use a
you're
lot because we tend to do a lot of sneaking.
So the blessing of the trickster, for those who might not have encountered this before, you can use your action to touch a willing creature other than yourself to give it advantage on dexterity stealth checks. It lasts for an hour or until you use it again.
Mhm. It's a great
Mm.
substitution for when you don't want to use Unseen Passage, which will affect more people as the whole group, but is, I think, level 3 of a spell.
I'm thinking of Pass Without Trace, and I got my brain crossed. But we
Oh,
can
it's
look it
second
up.
level. Pass Without Trace, second level spell. But still, that's
Mm.
a high level slot that you don't have to use.
Heck yeah. What is the feature you are most looking forward to using if you haven't done this yet? And hold on, I'll pull them back up because I
Oh,
scrolled away. There are two that you
yes.
haven't unlocked yet,
Mhm.
at widely different levels, but
Oh, dang. I keep going too far. Hold on.
mm, I'm sorry. There's a
Okay.
faster way to get here that I could. There we go. You can now, by the way, our amazing programmers made it so that you can link to a sub thing. So if I were smart, I would have done that in the first place. But here we are.
Oh.
Click this little guy, and it'll sort of center you on the that part of the site. Um, so you already have your specific flavor of channel divinity, which is invoke duplicity.
Mhm.
We were just recently on the channel talking about the Echo Knight fighter, and this has a little bit of the same flavor of like here, over here, this attack could come from anywhere. Mm,
This one I
Yeah.
haven't gotten to use yet only because I feel like there could be a cool way to do this with the studio and with the cameras that we just haven't quite figured out yet. Because that's one of the things that I really like about doing the show Invitation to Party is that they're constantly trying to say, okay, how can we make this interesting to look at visually? So spell representation of like someone fires an eldritch blast and you can see it in the lighting and the shadows and stuff. So I think there's something interesting here with the invoke duplicity that we haven't quite figured out yet.
Oh, it will be very interesting to revisit this one once we've seen that. It is just getting my production nerd hat on, it is so much fun to collaborate with people on figuring out how to creatively interpret all of these table experiences we love for a different way of presenting them.
Yes, I mean, I would
Delicious.
love to give a shout out too to the production team for LA by Night, the Vampire the Masquerade show that I've done, because they pioneered a technique live streaming where a character would turn invisible. They would take a picture of the set without the character, and then while the character was invisible, would fade into it a la green screen, like chroma keying out, and it was such a great effect.
It's very fun. It's funny because
Yeah.
I know,
Oh,
sorry, this
Callisto
is just
6 too. We did it for Callisto 6.
we did. It is funny because just not to get too sidetracked in like our fun live streaming histories, but as a long time tabletop person, I came into a lot of these things being like, we don't need to add anything to that experience. Table experiences are already perfect. But once you've got the right collaborators and you see something like that where you're like, oh, this doesn't take anything away from the table experience, but it makes watching this so much fun. And
Yes.
it's just these additive elements that are such a
Yeah,
fun part
and
of
it's
bringing
fun to
these
be a
games to life.
part of because we're in it. You're innovating, you're changing the space. I think that's really cool. Anyway.
And we all like to make things up. That's why we're playing makeup games.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so your cleric will in the future. You now have your cloak of shadows is a thing
Mhm.
for you currently.
Yes, and I used that in the most recent episode, or one of the most recent episodes. There was a ball where I needed to be invisible, and it's not protection against people bumping into you, but if you can dance, you can stay invisible.
An amazing way to flavor a challenge for this. But you will at 8th level get Divine Strike. You're going to be able to
Yes.
infuse your weapon strikes with poison.
Yes, one of the amazing things that we do with Invitation to Party is we've got a chest full of LARP props, so they're foam swords and weapons and things like that. But I happened to have brought my own from home, and my friend Ben Thomas made an incredible LARP weapon for my own character that I've now brought on for Trouvaille, and it's this staff that is made out of like I think it's just a PVC pipe covered in foam and painted to look like a rock, and it looks incredible. And he carved out a symbol and like painted it with UV paint, so it glows in the dark with like the sun symbol. So we get to act out a lot of combat and stuff like that, and the ability to be able to sort of infuse the tip of this staff with some energy or maybe poison. Very exciting.
And then, should you make it all the way up to 17th level, your duplicity is going to get extremely impressive, and you and the production team are going to get to figure out 4 duplicates of yourself. Uh,
Ooh.
very Fred Astaire dancing with all of himself kind of imagery is what I'm going straight for. But
Oh my
mhm.
goodness, yes! Full Thomas Sanders. I'll just have different personalities for each one.
So, what else about the build of your cleric? I notice you all put the luck theme strongly into play in a couple of different ways.
Yes. Yeah, that was the big thing, is that's what we wanted to base this off of, and again, I forgot this whole concept that we were kind of building from scratch from a previous, like, iteration of domains. So that was particularly a fun challenge, and like I said, coming up with in the moment, like, what do Travail's spells look like? Because a lot of it is like, "Oop, I bump into someone, and this light falls, and this rock tumbles down," and it's just a lucky set of circumstance that this happened.
Now I'm apologies to the chat, but I'm going to go comic books again because it's what I do. There are a few characters with
Like
versions
Domino.
of luck. Mhm. You've got some Domino in there, Domino Longshot, although his only work when his intentions are pure, and then Scarlet Witch's hex magic. One
Oh!
version of it traditionally was
I
that
didn't
like
know that.
her, it would tweak reality to sort of be like, "Oops, the branch snapped under you,
Oop,
hexed."
what can you do?
But
That's
that's a
cool.
really fun concept to put into play, and mechanically, it looks like you've supported that with the lucky feet.
Yes,
Mhm.
because one of the interesting things that we do with ITP is that we say that we are untethered. So sometimes we will get up from the table and we don't have our tablets with our either digital dice or regular dice. So B Dave has taken upon it himself to have a deck of cards. and these cards contain a black solid card for like a natural 1 failure, a green card for a success, red card for failure, and a gold card for critical success or a natural 20. And it's brutal. So that's how things are resolved out in the field, we like to say, or in the circle. And that's really where the lucky feat comes into play, because I can say, draw again, lucky feat. With the dice rolls, I don't do it so much because it gets a little heavy-handed. But with the deck, I am not afraid because it's evil and should be destroyed.
Noting that down. So, what else would you want to share with us about Travail, about the way you've built? You've got some nice stat ranges for your cleric. Um,
Yeah, the stats aren't great, and to put it as a range is really interesting. But I think that was one of the consolations that we did was, yes, he is high level for the spell casting abilities and things like that. I really wanted like a mass healing ability and things like that. But it did sort of take a hit in the general stats because we have 2+0s, which is not great. Couple of +1s and 2+2s. So it's where it counts, though. It's in wisdom for a
mhm.
cleric, and it's in constitution for a cleric.
Stay alive, help him out.
Yep.
Try to be as lucky as possible. Excellent,
Mhm.
excellent. Mhm. Now, what would you imagine for the future as you're sort of building Travail up? What would you want to sort of? Is there something you'd be looking to
Yeah.
beef up or add to him?
Yeah, I'm really interested to see where his trajectory goes because he started off in such a lighthearted, and it's how I like to play characters anyway. Very lighthearted, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. I can't wait to go on an adventure. And no spoilers, but like something terrible kind of happens to him under his care, and to someone else like in the party. And so we're dealing with sort of the ramifications of that. And I really want to see where this takes Trouvaille. And this is something where, like, again, we talked about in the beginning with improv, it's something that I've put into his loop that every once in a while, when we came back to the first combat and there was the first hit point of damage after this horrible thing happened, I made it a point to be Dave. I'm like, I'm going to go in with an excessive amount of healing because Trouvaille does not want anyone else to come close to hurting that much again. So Octavia, the rogue, takes like 6 points of damage or something. And I'm like, oh, I cast it a third level. And it's like, okay, 33 points back. And yeah, it's wasting a spell and all these things, but it's that character trajectory that I want to build into it and see where this goes. Previously, I've played characters, what was it? Total Party Kills over on the Scabby Rooster. I played a unicorn cleric where a terrible thing happened to him and he turned into like an awful revenge based like big bad of a season. So, things can happen. And I think that's really interesting.
Mhm. I loved that moment where you did the overkill healing spell.
Oh, right.
That
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
just that was a very fun one, and it gives your fellow players something to play off of and respond to, which is really fun. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just making the game more fun for everybody.
mm. We have some questions coming in about making characters and making them stand out. Valandar the Red asks, "How would you make a rather overcommon, almost cliche character type like a human fighter?"
Uh-huh.
You say cliche, I say classic, but your point stands. A half orc barbarian or an elven wizard, and make them interesting without going too far into a caricature.
Yeah. I mean, I know that there is a concern of going into a caricature, but my impulse is lean into the caricature and see where it goes. Because A, it's hard to keep up a bit for long before you sort of get sick of it and move on to something else. And B, it's fun for other players to sort of recognize like, oh, I've seen this character before in my favorite media. And so what would I react or how would my character react to this caricature? And then sort of fine tune as time goes on. It sort of softens around the edges, becomes more human, I guess, would be the case in this instance. But the classic tropes you can take and really make interesting. We've talked about this before by introducing some limitations. I think that's really where it is. It's a human fighter who is afraid of blood, a human fighter who is really wants to be a chef at the end of the day, but can only get trained in the blade of a sword. The limitations, I think, are where you can really change something and make it interesting to play in.
Yeah, that's great advice. Lauren himself
Yeah.
again asks, how do you encourage new players to get into the yes and, yes but, and similar mindset of improv during gaming to build upon their dice rolls?
That's so hard. And I feel like it can slip in and out during a session. Sometimes people are into it and sometimes people are not. If someone is looking at their phone at the table or more concerned about beer or snacks or whatever is happening. It's tough where someone else is really emotionally connecting, or it's a combat moment and it's not your turn type of thing. So it's hard to engage. But I think the what it comes down to is you're telling the story together. Pay attention when you're not, when it's not your turn or your character is not reflected. Take those little bits of improv of things that they're talking about, and then bring it up the next time that you're doing an action or talking, because that's not only involving you into the story more, but it's involving what happened with the other characters. That's hard not to metagame too, but it's easier to get somebody to yes and when they recognize, like, "Oh, we were just talking about that. Yes, yeah." And so it's connecting with their storyline, your storyline, and what the relationship is together.
So, for instance, if you're dealing with that scenario where you're a different character and the DM are going back and forth about the price of healing potions, and you know that
Yes.
your character is there observing that, then you
Uh-huh.
could potentially decide who you agree with. Like, is my
Yep.
party member being like, no, I'm sure he's honest. You're taking this too far. Or you could be like, hey, she's right. You're trying
Yeah.
to stiff us on these. And then you
Yes.
can either get involved or carry that forward or turn it into something you remember, like, good job haggling that guy. You have a million ways to sort of add on to that, right?
Yeah, and a big tip that I will give for somebody who's looking to do that is to wait. If
Mm,
someone else is you're observing as a character, someone else is having a scene and you have that, like, "Oh, I side with the shopkeeper," or "I side with this character," make a note of that, bring it up when it's appropriate. Don't try to butt into somebody else's scene all the time because that can come across as like, "I wanna make everything about me." But
mm.
afterwards, tell the DM, "Hey, I wanna pull so and so aside. Hey, that guy was really trying to rob us, right? Like, that what was he talking about?" Or, "Hey, I think you were a little harsh on that shopkeeper there. Maybe moving forward, we want to keep a low profile and we don't haggle so much." You know what I mean? Make those character
Mhm.
moments between each other, but have it be a moment, not taking over someone else's scene.
That's a great point because I don't always think through that sense of balance. And if you're listening, like, I would say, if it sounds like it might be tough to figure out when you should get involved in the scene and when you should save it for later, that's because there is no bright line
It's
there.
tough.
It's something
Yeah.
you have to feel out through experience and being like, you know what, that person's having a really nice moment right now. Let's sit back and enjoy this. And there might be other times where maybe they feel like they're flailing, and you know them well, and you know you can come in and tag team them, and that's just stuff
Yes.
you kind of have to feel out, but I trust you're all great players and you'll all get there together.
Yeah, but I mean, like you said, it can be tough to either to feel it out, and so that's where the improv tips can kind of come into play as well, because you can sort of think to yourself on top of all the other things that are going on in a TTRPG, with this scene that's either with myself or another person, has there been a beginning, middle, and an end, and is the game resolved in some way? So I see the shopkeep scene happening, and I know I'm not really involved in this until I see, like, oh, this felt like the beginning of the scene. There was a game and there was a middle, and now it's concluded. Now it's okay if I butt in to either keep the story moving or we take this conversation outside because it felt like there was sort of a button or an ending.
Now, if you're listening to this and you're sort of like, none of that is on my sheet, that sounds like a lot.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
understand it. That can seem intimidating, to be like, I have to break down the literary structure of our
Ooh.
makeup game, but it's essentially another set of guidelines that can help to shape your play exactly like the Player's Handbook and Dungeon Master's Guide that we love so much. So thank you so much for taking us through some of these additional levels of ways that you can think, I would say, letting structure guide your choices for the most interesting results is already what we do in TTRPGs, right?
Yeah, I had an improv mentor that would tell me structure sets you free. Because if you don't
Mm.
have to worry about the little things, if you know that there are these pillars in place of like, I know who I'm playing with, it's my friends around a table, it sort of sets you free to try things out and not be so harsh on yourself or on other people.
Thank you for sharing those amazing words of wisdom. It has been so much fun to talk to you today. Any other things that you can tip us to? Secrets about Trouvaille Farfoot or things we should look out for?
Ooh. Oh, yes. I think somebody had mentioned it previously, but Trouvaille, because I did sort of have to come up with him last minute, there are amalgamations of other characters that I've played that are bits of him. So, for instance, if you watch Shakar, you could recognize Scorpio's headband around Trouvaille's waist. The robe that he's wearing is actually from another character, Ingot, that I played, who was an abjuration wizard. The staff comes from my LARP character, and Trouvaille's last name, Farfoot, comes from Bora from Failed Save.
It's beautiful.
Yay.
Where
Yeah,
can
I just
people
like doing that.
go if they want to join some of these adventures on Invitation to Party?
Yes. So, Invitation to Party has a really interesting structure. You can watch the live taping of it on Fridays at 3 p.m. Pacific time on the G4 TV Twitch channel. But be prepared, we have to take the commercial breaks live while it's happening and taping. So, you do have to sort of sit and be part of the audience for that. But it's a fun tapings sort of moment. And then it airs live on G4 on Mondays and up on their YouTube channel sometime over the weekend. So, you can catch up by searching Invitation to Party G4 on YouTube.
It's been such a pleasure having you visit as always, Xander. Where can people find you personally for more of your wit and wisdom and games?
Yeah, find me at Xanderific with 2 R's and 1 F pretty much everywhere. My main hub is Twitter, but I also stream here on Twitch on my own channel. We talk about all stuff all the time. I'm going through Witcher 3 right now, and if you know, it's a long game. So we are going through the whole thing. I've also been playing through the Legend of Zelda series. So we've started from the beginning, and we're towards the end of Link's Awakening right now, coming up of an Ocarina of Time. So I'm very excited
Oh,
for that.
oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah, I
This has been an
also
absolute.
ooh,
No,
sorry.
go.
I just have a couple of TTRPG shows coming up.
Heck
Shakar
yeah.
will be returning for another season. We're in the talks for that. And then Failed Save will be coming back on the 28th. So for those keeping track, Fridays will be a two-show day for me. I'll be over at G4 Studios in the afternoon and then at the Pixel Circus Studios live in the evening.
More Xander is always good news.
Woohoo!
I delighted for all of that, for everything you have going on, and thank you so much for coming and sharing your TTRPG wisdom and telling us about your character. If you're watching this
Anytime.
and you are excited for more adventures of your own, which I hope you always are, make sure you are checking out those pre-order links for Critical Role Call of the Netherdeep and for
Woo!
Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse, both of which are coming our way in the next few months.
I'm a
Yeah,
huge
we
fan
have a
of his
lot.
watchdogs.
All that and more to come the next time you catch us here on D&D Beyond.
It's D&D.